All right, I think we are live. Facebook, check. LinkedIn, check. YouTube, X, Instagram. It's all working this morning. It didn't all work yesterday, but we're good today. Let's get rid of this banner because we're going. How do you like the music? This is specially written for Mornings with Scott by my friend Ion in Toronto. And so this is the first time we're trying out. This is going to be our new brand music. So I'll bring Ian on hopefully next week and he can tell us about how he created this. So welcome to Mornings with Scott, the best damn show for small, medium and small businesses on the planet. I was digitally flipping, if you can do that. Inc. magazine, if you could imagine, that was all fluff. But there was a good quote from Warren Buffett in there in part of an article that really said nothing. But I like the quote. The quote was, you only have to do very few things right in your life. You only have to do very few things right in your life, so long as you don't do too many wrong things. Wisdom to think about. In unrelated news, completely unrelated news, X is reporting this morning that on the Hunter Biden scandal, Hunter Biden clearly has done many things right in his life. I know you didn't expect me to say that, but he has. His education, but not, his business skills, negotiation skills, but not the least of which is he was born the son of a powerful senator and president, and but he's also done some wrong things in his life, including his self-admitted drug addiction problem, which we do not make fun of at all. That's not the way we roll here. But it was reported this morning that the DOJ, Biden's Department of Justice, has filed evidence in the tax trial that Hunter received a $3 million. So Hunter Biden has a tax trial going on in California. I think it starts September 5 for not paying taxes, and they tried to settle, it didn't work, whatever. So now they're going to go to trial, and the Biden DOJ filed evidence against Hunter that he took a $3 million payment from a Romanian oligarch to influence U.S. policy through Biden. So this is the type of activity that has long been the drumbeat of the Republican Party in the U.S. It's investigations in Congress. Of course, the Democrats deny it, and they make fun and scorn the people that suggest that this has happened. But what's different this time is it's his own Justice Department making the allegation. And I've predicted on this show weeks ago that, let me get into Geoffrey. We got a chat here from somebody coming in. I didn't know how that system worked on StreamYard. I predicted on this show that Joe Biden will resign from the presidency. He will do so in September, that they will push him out for no other reason that Kamala has a 2-3 month run as actual president so that she can be the incumbent, so that she gets a boost in the polls and help in the election. I'm sticking to that. I think this is more evidence that they have leverage on him, and that's what's going to happen. So, but the point of the story for us is the Warren Buffett advice of don't do too many things wrong. They come home to roost. This is clearly a fellow who's done some good, but also done too many things wrong. And speaking of which, I have another story that I've been avoiding like the plague for weeks and weeks, maybe months and months. Frank Stronach, the Canadian billionaire and founder of Magna International, this is from the Globe and Mail yesterday, has been at the center of serious legal issues, facing multiple charges of sexual assault involving 10 different complainants. The charges against him include rape, attempted rape, indecent assault, forcible confinement, sexual assault, with incidents allegedly occurring between 1977 and as recently as this year. For those of you outside of Canada or the automotive industry, you may not know Frank Stronach is, when I was coming up as a professional, was a god of manufacturing. Absolutely no doubt about it. Multi-billionaire, Canadian and Austrian, I believe. Magna International is this company, auto parts, tier one. And really just a fantastic businessman and entrepreneur. But for those of us, he's denied all of these claims, of course. He's saying they're just after his money. But and I think every rich and powerful person has weird claims coming at him all the time. That's just the truth. But for those of us that were around in those days, well, let's just say we don't have too many questions about this, and that there was definitely a lot of reputation things going on back then. In addition, he has criminal charges. He has a civil lawsuit filed by his granddaughter, Selena Stronach. She is seeking to compel the business to disclose documents related to these allegations, particularly any settlements paid out of the company. So her, as I understand it, her litigations have to do with the family piggy bank, right? And how that's going through the estate. And it's just another transition litigation where families fall apart, much like, if you're on the video, I'm holding up the book, The Phelan Feud, written by Stephen Kimber. You can look back on the Winning Momentum podcast channel, particularly on YouTube, and you will see an interview with this author, Stephen Kimber. And The Phelan Feud is about the story of the Phelan family, who were the founders of, not the founders, but the owners of Cara Foods and Swiss Chalet and Harvey's. And I can't even talk about that story without getting hungry. Here's the thing about Frank Stronach. He's 91 years old. He's 91. He's a billionaire in 91. And all these allegations come up, including an allegation that he committed sexual assault or something last year at 91. Come on. I'm not buying that part of it. But try not to do wrong. It comes back to haunt you. As Warren Buffett says, don't do too many things wrong. Now, we have a special guest for you today, and I picked somebody that has never done anything wrong and does everything good all the time. Welcome, Geoffrey Hiscock, to the show.
Oh, thank you very much, Scott. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I thank you very much for having me on the show. You're an absolute gentleman and a scholar, as always.
Jeff, you've been on the show before, not when we were live streaming, but you've been a guest of the show. You're a friend of the show. You're a friend of mine. But for the new audience, just give us the elevator pitch on your career, please.
Right. So, I'm a 25-year asset-based, senior secured, asset-based lending veteran. I started out in a bit of factoring, and then I got into the asset-based lending, working for various public institutions, and then into the private capital sector. Not private institutional, but private credit coming from funds, and so I've done that. And then on another passion side, which we can talk about after briefly, is my passion for apparel. Now that I've started up my own sort of somewhat advisory business, but I'm staying in my lane with asset-based senior debt. Like senior debt, I'm staying in my lane. And as it relates, Scott, to folks that, generally call in, I loved your podcast yesterday, and a good shout out to Mark Wilk, who's again one of our really good friends. He's just I just love the man. Having like yourself, and having said that, Mark is similar. Mark and I are similar in the way, and you came up with the word benevolent, and in that particular vein, when people reach out to me, they say, Jeff, what's your process? And I say, you know what, we can make the process what it is. What's important is getting your problem solved. Okay. So let's identify what the issue is. There's not, I'll sign an NDA. There's no engagement letter. We're just going to have we're going to have a friendly discussion, whether it's a half an hour or an hour. And if there's something I can determine that I can do for you, I'll list out what I can help you with. If I cannot, I have a roster of folks that can most certainly help. And I will do warm introductions and open the door for them to speak to those various folks, which I've been doing for the last 3 years.
Right.
On transactions.
And this is through your new business, Hiscock Asset-Based Capital Solutions, Inc.
Correct.
Which, by the way, has the sweetest website. The artistic side coming out of you.
Really?
You should check it out. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm modest. Thank you, because I grieved over it when I was doing it. But Scott, I want to go back. So when I was giving advice to folks, it's interesting because when I was giving advice to folks reaching out to me, and this is companies, it could be advisors, I'm talking about ABL, like ABL BDOs reaching out to me and saying, would you structure this? Like, how would you look at this? You know, and it's like, and some folks I haven't even met, and I'm not even privy to that information. They shouldn't even be sending me the information that they're sending to me, but I'll say, hey, you know what? We'll take a look at it. But during those 3 years, 3 years, what was happening is my moral standards exceed those of a company's code of conduct. And as such, I hang up your shingle, Scott. I work for Sinclair Range. I work for Scott Sinclair. I don't work for Jane Doe, who's shown me a deal, right? I don't take a fee off of that. I work for Scott Sinclair. Now, in the case we're working, you know what, where we partner up on various things, Scott, that's a different, you know what, now it's become a little bit of a difference, right? Because I'm not tied to chains on that side, right? But that's what I found like Scott, like just over the last 3 years in helping people out. And I noticed the significant gaps as it related to people coming to me with transactions, whether they purported to be an advisor. And I can tell you right now, they were way out of their element. Example.
The advisors are.
Oh, the advisor. Like just a quick one, just a quick anecdote for folks. So, gentleman calls me up. Yes, I'll talk to you. And I was with a private capital shop. Just said, hey, Jeff, I'm seeking a little bit of advice on this. Is there something we can look at? I said, send me an NDA. I want to, sign an NDA, Doesn't even send me an NDA. Just sends me his client's financial statements. Okay. And I said, you don't want to be doing this. Okay. So it's just a major breach of confidentiality. But I looked at it. This is just so you know, like, I mean, I'm not going to name names, obviously,
of course.
And I'm not under NDA anymore, but large it was a successful grocery chain in North GTA, 2 locations, looking to expand, approximately $120 million, $125 million of revenue between the two of them, $5 million of 5 to 6 of net income, no bank line, no payables, nothing. I said, why are you calling me? After I looked at the financials, he said, Jeff, because we're looking at ABL. I said, grocery stores, and I'm not going to get into it because they're cash. I said, if you're a grocery chain and you're coming to me, I'm not going to do the deal. There's a problem, okay? Because we're dealing with cash and some shelf stable.
Just quickly for the audience. So an asset-based loan is a bank loan of sorts, or a private credit loan from some sort of financial institution. And it is tied, the amount that you can borrow is tied to your receivables and your inventory and your hard assets, and
Correct.
sort of changes every day as you collect the cash of your receivables and buy more inventory. So you're what they call a borrowing base changes every day. And what Jeff is and what lenders prefer largely is the receivable part of those 3 things, right? Correct. Receivables, inventory, equipment, but they love the receivable part the most. And grocery stores don't have any receivables. That's your point.
They don't. The inventory is doing this. The days, the DIO, like
so your borrowing base has too much velocity on it.
Too much velocity. So I quickly said to him, Scott, I said, John Doe, I said, what I'm going to do is, okay, I don't shut doors. I never shut doors. I say, you know what? I'm going to help you because I help everybody. So what I'm going to do is, they don't have a bank line. They just have cash management. Who they deal with? They deal with this chartered bank. I said, you're going to reach out to that chartered bank. And I'm going to give you the names of some decision makers in other charter banks. And would that be at that level? And I swear to God, I said, you will have them lining up, throwing money at you all day long, because they're going to get the treasury management. They're going to get the cash, everything else. Right. So great. So he says, oh, that's great, Jeff. Scott, no, like, this is no kidding. 10 days later, he sends me term sheets from the lenders that he got I haven't even signed an NDA with this person. He sends me term sheets
What do you think?
from the people
What do you think, Jeff?
from the people that I set him up with, and he says to me, I said, you're like, you're only looking for 15, like they're giving you, like, they're throwing out 20, 25 plus for you for expansion. This is amazing. And he said, Jeff, the great thing is, he goes, I got a 3% fee on this thing. I said, what? You're going to get $600,000 off of this? He said, I need to cut you a check. I said, you are absolutely not cutting a check for me. I work for a particular institution. My code of conduct exceeds that of the company's code of conduct. I do not work for you. It is my pleasure to do that. And that made me so happy, Scott, to see that. And he went crazy. And that in itself has been a repeat. That's been a repeat particularly over the last 12 months, where I've got folks calling me up. Just a quick example. A gentleman that used to work for a real advisor, CPA, CA, became a CFO at a business in the eastern region of Ontario. Very 45-year-old business. Family has $12.5 million of deep sixth sub debt in it. No principal and no interest payments allowed. Deep sixth, okay?
Yeah.
$8 million line of credit, revolver, and the operation was in the printing industry, okay? They have a 30-year relationship with one of Canada's federal government agencies for printing, okay? They got an $8 million line of credit. They had $5 million outstanding. The gentleman from the capital advisor goes over to the company and says, hey, Jeff, just wanted to get your idea on this. You know what? Because we're dealing with an ABL at a chartered bank. But we're also dealing with a government agency who's got a term loan on us. And what's happened is the term loan we've breached the FCCR, despite the fact that we're fully making the payments. And I said, all they're going to do is they're going to slap you on the wrist, send you a reservation of rights letter and everything else. But as long as you're making your payments, you're good. There's no default rate. But I said, let me take, you know what? I'll sign an NDA. Just send me the borrowing base and some of the eligibility in the financing agreement. He sends it to me. 20 minutes later, I sent him back an email and said, I'm going to get you $1.1 million of additional excess availability on your line. He was like, what? I said, yeah, we're killing the 30-day goods, like the 30-day goods reserve that they have in there for $850,000 for your inventory that turns every 5 days on pallets of paper. That's coming out. Okay. I know you weren't there when you guys in 2017, when this was negotiated. That's out. Okay. And then there's a concept. I'm not going to go into it, Scott, because we've got time here, but we don't have much time here. But there's a concept that you're aware of called cross age, where, if a single account debtor goes over, it's 90 days plus, and they've got current stuff. Generally an asset-based lender will look at that and say, hey, what's going on with the 90 days? Oh, it's a dispute and it's going out and everything else. Well, why are you still selling here? Well, this is getting disputed. We're not going to lend on this entire account, right? And generally it's 50% or more of the past due that has to be 90 days past invoice date or 120 days, whatever it is, in order for the current portion to be ineligible. Well, these guys put on a 25% concentration, not 50, 25, despite the fact that the average DSO in the company was 45 days. And it was 45 days skewed because of that government agency who was paying them like clockwork every 45 days. So, you've got inventory rocking, you've got payables, you've got the trade helping out financing, you've got $12.5 million of sub debt in the company, deeply subordinated, and the company is financing its own, is actually continuing to pour money in to finance like a little bit of working capital, because they've had some issues like just post COVID, but they've fixed it. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, let's kick these guys out. Like, this is just, whatever. So anyways, at the end of the day, I got them $1.1 million of additional availability.
The existing lender just amended their terms.
Oh, they did. Like
Yeah.
within 10 days, I had it approved
Yeah.
for him. And I did that pro bono. Like, he went crazy. He was like, oh my God. I just said, these are the easy
So Jeff,
things.
it sounds like your new business is helping advisors get paid while you're doing stuff pro bono.
Well, and that's why, and Scott, and that's why folks like yourself have been so amazing to me. And I mean that. And you know that. Okay. I'm an authentic individual.
Yeah.
And folks like yourself and many of the other folks like Mark Wilk you mentioned, and there's other folks out there that are good friends of ours. I'm not going to mention their names, but they've said to me, Jeff, what are you doing? You need to monetize your network. One gentleman that you know very well, one of the co-founders of Griffiths McBurney, reached out to me. He requested my audience at Sud Forno, and I jumped. And he came from out west, and he sat me down and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You need to monetize your network." So that's what I'm trying to do, Scott. Is just work with folks like yourself on the Sinclair Range side, or partner up with different individuals where I can help, and I'll stay in my lane, whether it's an introduction or whatever it have you, or I can help out with underwriting or structuring or negotiation or looking at legals, because there's a lot of levers and pulleys that are in legal documentation, in asset-based documentation, or in senior cash flow agreements, sub-debt agreements. You got to be really careful.
I got two questions coming out of this. One that I had planned,
Yes,
but
sir.
another that just kind of came to me as you were talking. When I was starting my career in the first decade or so in it, advisors, intermediaries were really strong at helping companies approach private debt markets to the extent they existed, or do an M&A sale, or do a cash flow loan, or whatever. Help do a capital transaction to get money for that company. And then on the private debt side, guys like you came along working for the lender as a business development officer. But you were more than just generating leads. You have some smarts about you. You know how to structure a transaction, and you were going out, and from an advisor's perspective, you were sort of competing with the BDO officer at the institution that you wanted to bring deals to. And from my perspective at Sinclair Range and its predecessor firms, we competed, in air quotes, just fine and made lots of money doing that. But I think a lot of advisors did not, because guys like you and your peers, some of whom you've mentioned in this discussion, were really good, and you hustle, and you have an incredible network as a result, and it's your full-time job. You didn't actually have to do the thing afterwards. You could hand it over to underwriting. And
Correct.
so I'm thinking that the pendulum's gone back the other way, because as the private debt markets have blown up and they're letting go, it's not just a generational issue. It's very few of them have any money anymore. And so therefore they don't need a business development officer. And therefore, what's a company to do but go to an advisor? Are you seeing that? Does that hypothesis make sense?
It's 100, Scott. It is 100%. Absolutely. I'm going to be reaching out to the community. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I am going to put out on LinkedIn for folks, and I'm going to be very poignant. I'm going to ask, we have I love my U.S. friends. They you know what I mean? The U.S. is coming up here more and more because they've got the liquidity, but I'm going to put out a note of Canadian mid-market lenders, okay, $10 to $50 million, okay, who can write a check? Who can write a check and stand behind it?
Yeah.
Not drag somebody for 45, 60 days down the Garden Rose pathway just to say no.
And of the non-banks, it'd be what, 3?
Of the non-bank of the non-banks,
so
right?
is the number 3?
It's like, I'm telling you, there's not many. And that's the thing, Scott, is after the deterioration of and I can speak about it because it's public, of the bridging fiasco, which
Yeah.
started it kind of started it. But you know what? Private credit folks in what I do, you know what? That's come and gone. That's in the rear view. That was in 2020, 2021. Guys, there's no more excuses, okay? So, you know what? Like, again, if you're committing, if you know what, generally asset-based lenders will commit lines. They don't have demand lines of credit. So I'll commit a line, right, to you. So if I'm
Yeah.
giving it to you, then I'm contracted. If you're behaving yourself under the obligations of the contract, then I have the capital ready to provide to you when you ask for it, okay? Folks that are out there can look up lender liability. Okay. So having said that, there are very few private lenders now. It's gone in the last couple of years, private lenders in the ABL space in Canada, just Canadian firms. It's gone sideways. And I'm telling you, there's more to come.
Yet in the US, in the smaller parts, like the factoring, the sort of sub 10 million, is exploded.
It's incredible. If somebody now, if somebody now were to say, Jeff, you know what, we can give you, like, for somebody that has the cash, and they said, hey, can you put out $50 million? Like today, like, you know what, can you put out $50 million? Well, you know what, we'll trust you and everything. Yeah. You know what, we'll do this thing. I would have literally within a week, I would have a roster of people that have already started to give notice. Then that's 30 days. So then they come on board. I need one or two folks on with me. They come on board. Then it's just like within 60 days. And then I got, hey, all the documentation's done, everything ready to go, everything else, conservatively have money out in 180 days. At whatever, making money and doing it smartly and the right way to do it. You know what? And the biggest thing for me is, Scott, the one thing that I've noticed is with advisors, and this goes for some advisors, where some advisors are trying to be the be all, the end all. And I swear to God, I start asking them questions. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. And it's embarrassing. And I don't say anything. I'm just like, you know what? And so that's why I say to people, be very careful on who you work with, number one. And number two is, you know, and with the capital providers, you got to KYC the capital providers right now if you're in Canada, not the banks. I mean, the banks are fine and they're doing whatever the banks do. It's the alternative lenders. You need to, you know what? Like, you're trusting your business with this capital provider, KYC, know your client, know your lender. You need to dig into it. Trust me. And once you start to dig into it, you'll find discrepancies all over the place. And when that comes up, you run. So, and that is very prevalent right now. And so that is something I'm going to be addressing. I want to know who can write a $10 to $50 million check. And you know what, if they have to syndicate it, that's fine. But I'm transparent. You know what? I just want the truth. I don't want to waste people's time sending them down a rabbit hole. You know what? I'm not doing it. And that's the thing, Scott. So where transactions come in, if somebody comes to me about equity or sub debt, I'm calling you. Right. Like, I'm calling you, or I'm calling Mr. Pocock, or I'm calling whoever, right? That's the way it is. And I'm putting them to the person that can take them from A to B. And you know what? If I don't get anything out of it, that's fine. You know what? That makes you happy, and that makes things work together great.
Jeff, in the couple of minutes we have left, Globe and Mail reports this morning that Canada lost jobs in July, mostly young people. Unemployment rate at 6.4%. I've been very vocal on this show about being bearish on the economy, not just in Canada, but in the US, perhaps even globally. I think is largely driven by bad policy. We had the amazing Tom Clausen, you know Tom from Vancouver, on the show. So he was on the show, and I don't know if you've heard, but he sold his house and he's in an RV with his wife, and he's traveling across Canada, stopping at every BDC office and meeting with them across the entire country, business development
I
Bank
love
of
it.
Canada, something like that. And every
Yeah.
small community, he came and had dinner with me and Fernie. I took him golfing, and so he was on the show because I asked about his experience, and he'd done Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, all the small towns.
Yeah.
He'd done the prairies in the Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and his view was Vancouver, Victoria, everything seemed fine.
Yeah.
Calgary's booming with the oil patch, but you get into the prairies, you get the Saskatchewan, you get the Manitoba, everybody's depressed. The economy's way down. I haven't heard his view of the East yet. I suspect what he's going to find is that the Greater Toronto area is awesome and everything else sucks badly in
I totally
southwestern
agree.
Ontario and eastern Ontario.
I totally
Um,
agree.
what are your views? Like, you're out talking to businesses and to lenders. You have an incredible
Look,
network in
so
North America. What are you seeing in the economy?
it's
And
very
again, we've got like a minute, Jeff. So
okay.
if we can,
Very, very similar, Scott. So, and I'll make it really quick. So, very, very similar. I do see the banks pulling back on certain things. Like the banks are ratcheting back a little bit. There are smoke and mirrors going on, which I don't like. Like when they're, it's like they're advertising for jobs on LinkedIn. It's like they're not hiring. Like, you know what? They're just putting it on there. They're putting it on there just for perceptual purposes. I would
you're
tell you
saying
about.
the banks are doing that?
I'll tell you something privately where I got a letter back from a very large multinational accounting firm, Mr. Hiscock. You know what? And they pursued me. They fully interviewed me. We're not. Given the fact that you don't have any banking experience or new business experience or anything like that, it was almost like, why are we taught? Like, it was like this. I was
Yeah.
really hoping it was a template letter, because I got to tell you, I was going to post it on LinkedIn. I was like, this is the problem is communication, right? So anyways, in terms of the economy, I'm seeing the exact same thing. GTA is booming, but what's happening, Scott, is the gaps is you're getting some people led down the wrong paths. So you're getting some of these huge like I'm talking to an incredible business right now who I've put them in touch with. It's not ABL. So I put them in touch with a couple different private lenders who are very reputable, and they know what they're doing and everything else. And these guys have gone, honest to God, the enterprise value of the company in 2021 was 10 million. It's $250 million right now. Okay.
Okay.
And it's like, and the banks are like, oh, well, and the government has given them over hundreds of $1 million of grants, not loans. And I'm sitting there going, this is like shooting fish in a barrel. I said, you're set. Let's rock and roll, man. So that's, so I mean, that's the kind of thing where you're seeing some ignoring of some companies like that, Scott, and everything else. I'm seeing people being led down the primrose path. It's like 42 days later, I'm getting the phone call, and it's like, oh, Jeff, they turned me down. And I said, oh, it was like watching the Titan submersible in slow motion. I knew you were going to get turned down, but you didn't formally engage me. You know what? You asked my advice. I signed an NDA. I told you not to do this. You did it. And guess where you ended up? I knew that was going to happen. And I knew now the revolving lender is going to say no. And I'm on with their shareholders. Yeah. And they're like, oh, Jeff, no, we talked to them today. Everything's great. I said, oh, really? When are they going to committee? Tomorrow. I said, when are they calling you? The next day. I said, it's done. Like, guys, like, please listen to me. Like, stop wasting time.
When you've been around a while, you can see the field.
Scott,
and things aren't happening.
And we're going to get together at some point privately, and the stuff is going to make your head spin that I've seen.
So for business owners, if things are going down, if you're in a tight economy, I want you to focus on your cash flow, restrict your expenses, restrict your priorities, get rid of all those peripheral projects, focus on your core things for making money, and hunker down. Hunker down. That's all you can do. Jeff, thank you for joining us. Where can people reach you?
Absolutely. So, Geoffrey, so it's like Geoff. So it's like
it's actually on the screen. People can see it, and and it's in the notes too.
Oh, so it'll be just Geoffrey Hiscock at assetbasedsolutions.ca. And then I have, and then just a quick one. I've got another thing that I'm working on, which is and it's a passion. It's my clothing, which I'm not going to talk about, Scott, but that's something we can talk about privately.
You can
But
come back and talk about on the show if you want.
yeah,
We're just out of time today.
I would love that. One more thing, Scott, to add to your
Yep.
point, talking about keeping
Yep.
cash flow tight and keeping focused, folks. If you're over inventoried and you have a lot of inventory that's been sitting in inventory for 12 months or more or whatever, and you can get rid of it and create cash to pay down debt, do it. Okay.
Yep.
And you know what? And as well, Scott, thank you so much for having me on. You're an absolute gentleman and a scholar, and I can't wait to see you next. You're such a good friend, and you know what? I just love you. So, anyways, sorry.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Mutual. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been Mornings with Scott. We're Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. Mountain every single day, Monday to Friday. Follow along. We're on YouTube. You can subscribe. Look up the Winning Momentum podcast. I'm on LinkedIn, Scott Sinclair, and set up a new company page last night called thescottsinclair.com. Check out thescottsinclair.com. You can register for the newsletter, check out the blog posts. We broadcast to Facebook and to X. X is actually getting the most traction for live views, which surprises me, but that's pretty cool. And on Instagram, where all of my most of my followers are, well, there, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining, Jeff, and we will see you all next week. Have a great weekend.
Oh, you too, Scott. Be safe. Be safe.